This is Jennifer Meckles. I am reporting from Teller County this week. We're in Cripple Creek, Colorado, high up in the mountains, and we are covering the trial against Patrick Frazee. He's accused of killing his one-time fiancée, the mother of his child, Kelsey Berreth. We're outside the courthouse. Court has ended for the day here, and we're just filing our end-of-day report. And guys, it was a really busy day today. We had a lot of testimony. We had more than a dozen people take the stand and testify, and a lot of interesting things we learned today. I'm just going to kind of rattle through the list here, so bear with me. But we started this morning back with Kelsey Berreth again. This is Kelsey's mother. She started testifying on Friday before we broke for the weekend, and then picked back up again today. We also heard from Kelsey's brother, which is Cheryl's son, Clint Berreth. And both of them talked a lot about, where they picked up today was talking about in the days after Kelsey disappeared, not being able to reach her, being worried about where she might be, contacting police with their concerns, and eventually traveling to Colorado to come to her home and to talk with police and really figure out what was going on. And they talked about having stayed at her condo, the condo where we later were told by investigators that Kelsey was killed. And they said when they first walked in, nothing seemed super unusual in the house. They said that there didn't look to be any sort of signs of foul play, but they said the temperature, the thermometer of the house was up a lot higher than normal. And there were cinnamon rolls on the counter that looked like they'd been left untouched for days. And then in a couple days, as time went on, they started picking up on other things. They noticed her luggage was still there, indicating to them that perhaps she had never left. A couple of her toiletries and her makeup was still at the house. They thought that was odd. But one of the biggest discoveries was when Kelsey's brother, who testified today, that he was in the bathroom a couple days into this and he noticed a spot of blood on the toilet, and that felt really strange. And then they contacted police, and they also started noticing around the house, when the light was right, surfaces around Kelsey's home, her family said looked like they'd been wiped down. That felt really weird to the family, so they notified police. A lot of the testimony today focused on what they found or didn't find in the apartment, and also the Berreth family talking about texts that came into them after she disappeared, her mother specifically, that just sounded a little different than normal Kelsey. That also felt strange to them. Then we started hearing from a few other witnesses today. Let me pull up my notes here because, again, there were so many people. We heard from two of Kelsey's neighbors. I want to talk about one of them first. It was very brief, but this is a neighbor who shared a wall with Kelsey. Lived right next door in the same condo complex, shared a wall. That neighbor said she didn't know Kelsey well. She'd met her a few times. It was really just exchanging pleasantries, no real in-depth relationship. The neighbor said she had given Kelsey a baby gate. Remember, Kelsey and Patrick had a little girl. The neighbor gave her the baby gate. But other than that, never noticed anything out of place, never heard any loud noises, something that sounded odd. And that neighbor said that when this alleged crime happened on Thanksgiving Day of 2018, she was out of town. She wasn't even in town, didn't find out anything had been going on until she came back and was contacted by police. I'll talk about the other neighbor in just a minute. We heard from one of Kelsey's supervisors at work. She worked as a flight instructor at DOS Aviation in Pueblo. And that supervisor spent a lot of time talking about what Kelsey did there, teaching other flight students, and also how she normally communicated with her bosses, especially if she was going to take time off. It feels like that's a significant part of this because in the days, again, after her disappearance, her bosses received a communication from Kelsey's phone saying she'd be out for a week. And they said that's odd. It came in a little differently than she would normally communicate about being off. And it sounds like they're trying to build something with this case where this is not how Kelsey would have normally communicated. Perhaps somebody else was communicating from Kelsey's phone and not Kelsey herself, trying to make it look like she was still alive when perhaps by that point she'd already been killed. Again, this is the prosecution's case they are building here, and these are the things that they're asking in court and the way that these witnesses are answering with their testimony. We heard from a lot of police investigators who searched Kelsey's home. First, when her mom called and said she was worried, they went to their home, didn't notice any signs of obvious foul play, nobody breaking into the house, no windows broken. And they returned several times. There were more searches, not just that first one. And in their follow-up searches, they're taking pictures and taking note of things around the house, like receipts from the grocery store, receipts from a gas station, trying to build a timeline of where she was and when and what was going on. And investigators said the first few times they were at her house, again, they didn't notice this little bit of blood in the bathroom. It didn't seem like something violent had happened in that home. So in the beginning, they were just trying to figure out if she was there. They weren't investigating. They were looking at this as a missing persons case, not at that point past that. We heard from two people who had interesting conversations with, they say, Patrick Frazee in the days after Kelsey disappeared. One of them was the manager at a credit union who testified today that Patrick and Kelsey had an account there, and that after Kelsey disappeared, Patrick came in asking some questions about surveillance images and account activity on his account in the days after Kelsey disappeared. She thought it seemed odd, and she had a follow-up conversation with the investigators after that happened. We also heard from a guy who worked at a Verizon store in Woodland Park, and he said Patrick also came into the store and had a conversation with him that felt weird, and he then relayed that to law enforcement. This Verizon employee said that Patrick came in wanting to ask questions about access and security to his phone account and wanted to know that if the other phone on the account, they didn't say who had that phone, but the other phone on his account, if it had been destroyed, could somebody still access that? And the Verizon employee said that Patrick felt like he was acting weird to him, that something was off. And so then he also relayed information about this to investigators. This Verizon employee said he didn't know who Patrick was when he first walked in, didn't realize that there might be a connection to the missing woman case that he'd heard about in his community. But after that interaction, he thought things sounded weird, so he called police. Who else did we hear from today, Allie? Oh, at the very end of our day, this was interesting. There was a gentleman who works as an investigator for the district attorney's office, the prosecutor's office, who wanted to know about surveillance video on another neighbor's house near Kelsey's house. That was the second neighbor we heard from today. So there's a woman who lives very close to Kelsey who has surveillance cameras on her house. And for probably the last hour and a half of a day, this is the kind of testimony we explored. And they were really curious to see if any of her cameras would pick up any movement outside of Kelsey's home. This is one of those surveillance systems that if you don't intentionally keep video past about a week, it disappears, it doesn't keep. So this woman's video, she didn't know might be relevant until after it had already deleted, but she gets emails notifying her when there's movement that wants to, they want to notify her of movement. And those emails save a picture. So while there's not video, there were still images of many of the times she got alerted that there was movement outside of her house. So this investigator with the prosecutor's office testified today that they were very interested to see what kind of movement might have been happening outside of Kelsey's house on Thanksgiving Day last year. They compared a couple days before and a couple days after and said each day the particular camera that's near Kelsey's door picked up on 3-4 times a day, Allie? But on Thanksgiving Day it picked up 27 times. Notifying this neighbor her security camera was getting some sort of movement outside of Kelsey's front door. And they went back and they looked at the pictures. And again, we haven't seen the full video. We don't know the totality of it all, but there were images of Patrick Frazee captured in 11 of those 27 notifications. You can't really see anything other than him kind of near the door, but they felt that that was significant enough to bring up and introduced at this for testimony today. That is kind of just glossing over the day. It was a lot of information coming out today. Let me check with Allie and see if anybody's got questions I might be able to answer. Anybody pinging us with questions?
We've gotten this question a few times.
Okay.
When will Crystal Lee testify?
So Allie tells me some of you want to know when Crystal Lee will testify. This is the woman who has pleaded guilty in this case to tampering with evidence. Prosecutors say that she was solicited to commit the murder and didn't, but then helped Patrick Frazee clean up the crime, and she is a witness with some very important information. We don't know. They haven't said to us in open court when she might come. Part of her plea deal is that she will testify if called upon to do so. You haven't heard anything about the actual date on that, have you?
Yeah, I don't think so.
Okay, yeah, I haven't either. So at this point, we don't know when she'll be here. We don't know what we can really expect from that. I will tell you, though, this trial is only supposed to be 3 weeks. If it keeps to the schedule the judge is trying to keep. And we're beginning the official week 1 of that 3 weeks. We got 3 weeks. The second thing is I will tell you that while we don't know when she will testify, there's a lot to do about that testimony because the prosecution's leaning very heavily on her information. At the same time, the defense, in their opening statements, is already trying to undercut her credibility, saying she's lied before. Are we sure we can trust her, essentially? But yeah, we don't know quite yet if and when we will see her here in Teller County. Anybody else?
And we talked about this. Lance wants to know, is there any motive in this case?
Lance is asking us if there's any motive in this case. I don't remember hearing a clear-cut explanation of that in the opening statements. Do you, Allie?
No.
But I think we might, as time goes on, learn a little bit more about what all was going on in these people's lives. So I can't say with real clear conviction yet if I'm sure how they're narrating that yet, if I'm being perfectly honest with you.
And just a bunch of people want to just make sure Kelsey and Patrick's baby is okay.
People who are asking about the baby.
Yeah, people are asking about
So at the same time that this has been going on, there's been his family and her family. People are asking about their little girl who was about a year old when this crime allegedly happened. She's currently in the custody of Kelsey's family. We have seen through the court documents an effort by Patrick's family to also try to have custody of the little girl, but at this time she is with Kelsey's family. Anything else?
It looks like those are the questions. You could tell people it will be up for review again. A couple of people asked. And
Up for review?
Yeah, we'll post this video.
Oh, yes. Yes. Yes, thank you. For those of you who are catching us in this live report now, if you want to see this later, if somebody didn't see it and wants to, these Facebook Lives get posted, so you can return to this later. It's not just in this one moment. Also, I have to tell you guys, if you want a really comprehensive read on what's going on here, all the little details I can't spew in just like, a 10-minute Facebook Live, my colleague Allison Stilt has been writing very comprehensive online stories to accompany our coverage on television. Read those. She's picking up on a lot more stuff and can include it in the written word much better than I can just sitting here in this quick little Facebook Live conversation. She's got a lot more details in there, a lot of other things people are saying that I'm kind of quickly going through as we go here now. And also just a reminder, no cameras in the courtroom, no live tweeting from court, so we are restricted to only filing updates after we step out each day. So we're doing our best to bring those to you as frequently as we can. Any other questions, Allie?
I think that's it.
Okay, with that, guys, we will let you go. We'll wrap this up for today. We appreciate you hanging with us. We'll see you again tomorrow afternoon. And again, just check online. We've always got updated information there on the case. Thanks for following along. Have a good evening.